Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Congresswoman Plaskett, for hosting tonight's special order hour on the federal government's response to natural disasters. I believe that Ms. Plaskett and the experience that she has had in her homeland can open our eyes to the devastation that has taken place in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as well. It is unthinkable what these American citizens have been through over the last several weeks and will continue to suffer from months into the future. But before I begin, I have a message for the families and the friends of the 58 innocent people's lives who were taken and more than 500 who were injured in Las Vegas overnight. The country's compassion and thoughts go out to you. Our hearts break with yours. To those injured, know that the American people are praying for your recovery. And to the first responders who put their lives on the line daily, thank you. What went down in Las Vegas last night was an act of terrorism. There's no other name for it. A deranged man with a small arsenal of firearms in a hotel room shot into a crowd of people at a concert. For an hour and 12 minutes, people watched the chaos unfold. All the moments of silence in the world won't change what happened last night in Las Vegas, last year in Orlando, the year before in Charleston, and the list goes on. Moments of silence used to be for showing honor or respect. There's nothing honorable about keeping silent and doing nothing to prevent gun violence. There's nothing respectful about rejecting every single reasonable gun bill proposed in the past decade. What kind of nation are we when we sacrifice human lives on the altar of the gun lobby? The time to act was yesterday. The federal government has a moral duty to protect the welfare of American citizens before tragedy strikes. Yet when the news moves from one disaster to another, we often suffer a sort of amnesia. We don't seem to remember or learn from our mistakes. We forget to fix the problems of our citizens call us on about every single day, and the problems inevitably repeat themselves. One issue we seem to have repeated amnesia about is the high cost of our constituents face when evacuating a disaster area. Particularly after hurricanes, we read reports that due to reduced capacity and high demand, flights are full or tickets are prohibitively expensive. And even if the airlines cap flight prices like they did last week, federal taxes and fees can increase the price of an evacuation by 20%. Recently, this hit home for me. One of my district staffers had family stuck in Puerto Rico. Because Hurricane Maria knocked out the power and the telephone lines, my staffer had no way of knowing whether her loved ones were alive or dead. Many constituents have contacted our offices to let us know that the difficulty they were having in trying to find out whether their loved ones were safe or not and how we could help. She tried to get in touch with her family for 8 long days before hearing that they were okay. Then when my staffer tried to book a flight for her family to get out of Puerto Rico, the only tickets available were for first class. First class. That's over $700 on a flight full of disaster evacuees. My DC staff did a little digging. Here's what they learned. The American people rely on the goodwill of the airlines to cap the prices of flights from disaster areas. The airlines decide when to start the cap and when it will end. The airlines decide whether to keep selling first-class tickets. And the federal government never stops charging taxes on flights from disaster areas. American citizens deserve better, Mr. Speaker. That's why, starting this week, I will be introducing a series of bills to ease the financial burden Americans face when escaping natural disasters. The Humanitarian Flight Fairness Package will do 4 things. First, it will allow the Secretary of Transportation to declare an aviation humanitarian crisis at specific airports covered by a presidential declaration of emergency. Second, it will allow the Secretary of Transportation to mandate that airlines charge no more than the median fare price of all seats sold on that route in the prior calendar year. Third, the package would require the FAA to waive the $5 and the 60-cent passenger facility charge during an aviation humanitarian crisis. And fourth, the package would require the FAA to waive the U.S. International Transportation Tax, which is $18 on a flight from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. American citizens, Mr. Speaker. Too often Congress reacts to crisis. It is time for us to be proactive. It is time for us to legislate before another disaster strikes. The Humanitarian Flight Fairness Package is a common sense solution to a problem that directly affects our constituents. Mr. Speaker, I always try to deal in common sense. As a matter of fact, I have a constituent back at home who constantly reminds me of how shallow I am. So I can do nothing but rely on common sense based on this constituent's feelings about me. But I want to thank the Congresswoman again for hosting this special order hour, and I look forward to continue working with you as you address the issues faced by Americans affected by natural disasters, whether it is on the mainland or in the territories. They all are American citizens. When it benefits this nation to have Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands be a part of the United States, it does not hesitate. But when these American citizens are in trouble, they deserve the same rights that every American citizen benefits from in this great nation. And it is great. And we want to continue to make sure that it remains great. And I continue to make the point, Mr. Speaker, that these are American citizens we're talking about. This is not foreign aid. This is not mutual aid. This is aiding American citizens in trouble, in disaster, in peril. No insulin for diabetics, no dialysis for kidney patients in 2 or 3 weeks. That's a death sentence, Mr. Speaker, and we cannot allow it to continue. And with that, I yield back to the gentlelady from the Virgin.